jump in there. So, well, good morning, all. We missed a couple of weeks, and so we're picking back up. We'll kind of cover some material today, and then try to hit the punchline next Sunday and finish up. So we left off, as I recall, at the end of chapter 13, we just talked about these beasts, the visions of these three beasts rising up, the dragon and the beast from the sea and the beast from the land. And so we had kind of the demonic figure, the dragon. We had the beast, who is kind of the emperor, and then we have the beast who's the false prophet. And so we have those three beasts. And so we turn to chapter 14 this morning, and we continue with kind of the remaining visions of this section. So turn to chapter 14. And, are we all there? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm going to jump around a little bit, so I'll read this section. Then I looked, and there was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him were 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice like the sound of many waters, like harpists playing on the harps. They sing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. So what is that reminding us of? What's the scene? Where are the four living creatures and the 24 elders and the figure on the throne? Where is this? Does that sound familiar?
Opening.
Yeah, the opening. Say when we first entered when the seer first enters the heavenly realm, he sees the throne room of God and all these figures, and they're singing a new song. It is these. We're told that the 144,000 have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. Now, that's just another. We've seen this in the book, and we'll see it again with the Whore of Babylon. These images of sexuality in the book are really images of faithfulness to God. That if you're faithful to God, you don't worship idols, you don't engage in inappropriate behaviors. That's one kind of person. The other kind of person is the one that defiles themselves in various and sundry ways. But anytime you see the sexual language, it's not really talking about sex nearly as much as it's talking about faithfulness. And the idea here is that the emphasis on being virgins is that they are preparing for battle. And the way the ancient soldiers would prepare for battle was that they retreated from their homes and they got away from conjugal relations so that they could focus, they could prepare themselves for battle. And so that's what this is describing. The 144,000 are with the Lamb. And of course, Mount Zion. Does anybody know what Mount Zion is?
Yeah, it's where the temple.
Where the temple is, exactly. It's the Temple Mount. And so the imagery is the 144,000 faithful. I have joined the Lamb, and they are meeting at the temple, the Mount Zion, to do battle. And these are we're told the 144,000 are the redeemed, the first fruits for God and the Lamb, and they are blameless. Now, when you hear phrases like they are blameless, that smacks in the face of Lutherans, right? I mean, we're used to hearing the language of we're saints and sinners at the same time. And so when you hear language about blamelessness, it's cognitive dissonance for our theology. But in apocalyptic literature, the idea of being blameless is that you are the people that are faithful over against the people and the powers that are unfaithful. So that's an important image to keep in mind. It's just like in the book of Job, when Job is said to be blameless. It doesn't jive, it doesn't make sense to us, because we're saying there is nobody who is righteous, no, not one. But the book of Job only makes sense if you acknowledge that Job is blameless. That's the only way. That the whole tension of the book is about him being righteous. The same thing is going on here.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is 144,000 supposed to seem like a lot?
Yes. Yes, it's 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. And so you've got that symbolic number, the 12 times 12, but then the 1,000, the 3 zeros at the end, give it that oomph, that anytime you get those multiples of 10, it's meant to indicate power.
So this is supposed to be like a powerful getting ready for battle scene?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. From this point on, we're moving toward the cosmic conflict. So, there's a sense in which the whole book's been moving that way, but we're getting serious now. We've met the beasts, and we've got the enemy described. Now we're getting the Lamb being described. And again, what's our question that we keep asking in the book? Where's Jesus? And so one place we see Jesus now is as the Lamb of God leading the 144,000. And yes, it's meant to be a dramatic number, and yet, at the same time, the biblical narrative is always packed with stories of God doing unusual and remarkable, even miraculous things, and the reason God does this is so it's clear that God is at work, that God is intervening. So why are Abraham and Sarah so late in having a child? Well, if they have a child at age 30, what's the big deal? But if they have a child when they're 190 years old, 190, 100 years old, the only way that can happen is God. So, so that's an example. Or in the book of Judges, sometimes they would wean the army, kind of whittle it down to a small number, and that small number would take on the battle, because again, what wins the battle is not the army, it's God. And so in order to emphasize that, we often have those kinds of images going on. So 144,000 is a lot, but it's going up against a huge army. All the kings and all the rulers of the world are about to come together with the beast. And so it's a lot, but it's not an inordinate amount of people when you think about who they're going up against. We have another couple of visions of angels here. In verse 6, we have an angel flying around, and it says the person has an eternal gospel to proclaim to every nation, tribe, language, and people. Notice that phraseology keeps popping up. This book is very much addressed in an inclusive way to all peoples and languages and tongues, etc. He says, "Fear God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water." Fear God and give him glory. This is another one of those calls. Throughout the book we get this call for the saints to be faithful, to step up, to endure. Verse 8, another angel of second follows. "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great." The first angel is saying, fear God. The second angel is saying, Babylon is fallen. And notice it puts it in perfect tense. Babylon has fallen. It is fallen. It's not going to fall. It's fallen. this is an example of, even though the battle is about to take place, the outcome of the battle is certain. It's a done deal. There's no question about it. We still have to have the battle, but the outcome of the battle is assured. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. Now, who is Babylon? Rome, yes. So remember, Babylon is that code language for Rome throughout this book. The third angel says that those who worship the beast and its image and receive a mark on their foreheads will also drink the wine of God's wrath. And at the very end, it says, for anyone who receives the mark of its name, there will be no rest day or night. And notice this whole imagery of being sealed, being marked. This is like the opposite of baptism. Now, baptism is the way the Christians get marked. Circumcision is the way Jews get marked. The whole idea of being sealed is to say there's a marking that goes on for the faithful, but there's also a marking that goes on for the unfaithful. And those who receive that mark, who play under that set of rules, they're going to be a part of that losing confederation.
So for us, I'm thinking of that baptism thing about you are marked with the cross. I can't say it.
You're marked with the cross of Christ, yeah.
And sealed by the something
And
forever.
sealed by the Holy Spirit. Yeah.
So is
And
that
sealed,
sort of our heritage after this Old Testament, after the Revelation, is we would still think, well, how are we marked? And that's the answer for Christians, that baptism is how we're marked?
Yes. That's one of the downbeats of sacrament is that sacrament. It's not that God needs sacraments. God doesn't say, Barb, if you had just been baptized by immersion instead of sprinkling, you would have had. I'm sorry, but you need to get your doctrine right. Okay. Now, see, that's not. Sacraments are for us. We're humans. We're the ones that need rituals. We're the ones that need ceremonies. We're the ones that need markings along the way. An example, by the time somebody gets married, if they haven't already made the vows that they intend to make publicly, if they haven't already made a commitment, then nothing you do in that ceremony is going to matter. But the ceremony is a point of demarcation. It's a ceremony that we need for the purposes of marking the event. Humans need these markings along the way. The sacraments are for us, meaning they're gifts from God to serve us in our spiritual journeys. When we do the milestones in church, we do those milestones as rituals, as things that mark our intentional spiritual growth. So that's, we see that going on here. But you notice in this case, the intention is to be marked with the marks of the beast. And we need to acknowledge that happens too.
So is that a visible mark? Because the baptism mark is not visible.
Yeah.
It's visible to God, I'm sure, but not. And I can look around this room and I don't see a tangible thing.
Yeah.
So is the beast mark visible, or is it?
Well, I mean, it's like
who is it for? I guess.
Yeah. I think in the book, what's going on is that there is a marking that goes on, the 666 mark is in the book. So they're saying some of people are walking around with baptism or a cross, sealed with the cross of Christ, or there are people that are walking around sealed with the 666. So that again, it's symbolic, not literal. They're not saying, somebody move their hair so I can see if you got that. It's not like that.
Okay.
But in modern times we might say, what does it mean to be marked with the beast? And we can ponder that. We can talk about what does it mean to do this or do that. Are we marked with baptism? Well, how are we marked by the secular world? How does it mark us, claim us, put a label on us? And, we could spend some time pondering that. Verse 12, this is one of those downbeats of 12 and 13. Here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and hold fast to the faith of Jesus. This is like a great summary of what this book is about. Here is a call for the endurance of the saints. What do? They keep the commandments of God. They hold fast to the faith of or in Jesus. The phrase faith of Jesus or faith in Jesus, that preposition in Greek can mean both things. And so it's interesting to ponder, is it the faith in Jesus that saves, or is it the faith of Jesus, the faithfulness of Jesus that saves? And of course, that double meaning suggests, well, you can see both things at work. The faithfulness of Jesus is redemptive and salvific, and also the trusting in Jesus, believing in Jesus, living by Jesus is the way we move through our lives. And I heard a voice from heaven say, "Blessed are the dead who from now on die in the Lord. They will rest from their labors and their deeds follow them." Here's another one. If you're marking, this is another one of those benedictions that we talked about that we keep running into in the book. So we have another benediction throughout the book. And again, notice it says they'll rest from their labors and their deeds follow. Again, this is very bad Lutheran theology, right? We're not saved by our works, by our deeds. But again, in apocalyptic literature, the idea is that your behavior is what indicates who has marked you, how you are marked, And so it's not that your deeds save you in apocalyptic, because they can't. Remember, we talked about the fact that the only salvation in apocalyptic literature is that God must intervene. Whatever has happened on earth, it's done now. The bad stuff has happened, and we are powerless. But we can trust, we can wait, we can hope, we can endure, and God will intervene in God's good time. Okay. Now, the next thing is 14:14. Then I looked, and there was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like the Son of Man, with a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. And another angel came and called with a loud voice, "Use your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, because the harvest of the earth is fully ripe." And so the one who sat on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was reaped. Now, notice, again, where's Jesus here?
Son of Man.
Son of Man, right. So we had Jesus the Lamb in the first part of the chapter, and now we have Jesus the Son of Man, and he comes on a white cloud. Remember, we talked about how in Daniel 7:13, the Son of Man descends on a cloud and comes. And so this is borrowing from the image from Daniel. The Son of Man is descending on the cloud, coming. And notice that the battle, he doesn't come with, and here he doesn't have a sword, he has a what?
Sickle.
A sickle. So the battle is going to be more of a harvest. It's going to be a harvesting more than a battle. It is going to have battlefield elements later, but at least the first thing to notice is it's a harvest. You know, the time has come. The alarm clock time. The kairos has come. That word that means God's time, the special time, the moment of time has come. It's not just a tick-tock, you know, what time is it? It's, you know, 12:32 in the day. No. This is, the moment has come. So the Son of Man has come with the sickle and it's harvest time. And then he speaks, the angel says, use your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for its grapes are ripe. And this angel has come, and this angel also has a sickle. So now the Son of Man with a sickle is kind of using a messenger, an angel, to begin to wield that sickle. And you know, it's what Pastor Laura was talking about today, about accomplish your will in me, right? She said that petition, thy will be done, and all of that. It's really saying, accomplish your will in me. And so, you know, spoiler for those who haven't been to the first service. But that notion is that Christ, or the Son of Man, has now turned the sickle over to the angel who is doing the reaping. And it's the winepress of the wrath of God, we are told. All these grapes are being poured in, and the winepress is trodden outside, and the blood flows from the winepress as high as a horse's bridle for 200 miles. So imagine kind of 200 cubic miles, and this blood is as high as a horse's bridle. It's a dramatic image. It's meant to be one of these shocking images. But again, it's an image. It's not literal. It's not like, no, it's 200 miles, not 212. It's, you know, it's not like that. The point is, it's a dramatic thing. The harvest is producing a dramatic outcome. Now, we should point out that this imagery of the what I want to say, the wine press is echoes back to images from the Hebrew Bible. We in the prophets especially, we have imagery of this, so that the reader of this book would recognize that these images, that it's not like I've never heard these images before. People familiar with the Hebrew Bible would have said, oh, I remember that from the prophets, or I remember that from Genesis, or whatever it may be. So the book is constantly building on these images from other literature, that biblical literature that the people would know. So that's chapter 14, I think, is a pretty rich and important chapter. It's a transitional chapter after 13 with all the beasts and 666. Now, you know, we had the bad guys, now we've got the description of the good guys. The Lamb, the 144,000, the Son of Man, and the harvest. So those are kind of the oppositional images going on. Any comments or questions on chapter 14? Yeah?
So I was just sitting there thinking, as I do, if you talk about the blood flowing and the amount, and you think about crushing a grape, you go back and think of the image of how many grapes that would mean as far as people. That would be a large swath of reaping, right? I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands or millions, or just this
Yeah.
wide swath of.
Yeah. The imagery is meant to be very dramatic and
Yeah.
bold. Yeah.
It'd be like we're having an abundant harvest, or that there's going to be a lot of people killed.
Well, that's a great point, isn't it? And it's kind of both, because you've got the harvest is a separating the wheat from the chaff, right? And so you've got to get the grain or in this case the grapes harvested, but then you've got to turn around and in this case you press them, and the wine press is an imagery and the prophets of the wrath of God. And so God's wrath is taking place, but at the same time the harvest is also an image we see in the Gospels, an image of Jesus harvesting the faithful. So both things are wrapped up in a harvest. That's a very good point. Very good point. Other thoughts, comments, observations? Good stuff there. All right. With chapter 15, we begin to another series of sevens, and you see that what's going on here is another portent in heaven, great and amazing, 7 angels with 7 plagues, which are the last. For with them the wrath of God is ended. The idea is it's concluded, it's finished. The work of the wrath of God is complete and done. So that, again, you see how we're moving toward this punctuation, this very dramatic punctuation. I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those who conquered the beast and its image and the number of its name, standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God. And they sing the song of Moses. Now remember, the sea, Moses sings his song when? Do you remember when he sings his song? What has just happened?
The sea parting.
Exactly. The Exodus. And so his song is a celebration of God's deliverance. God has delivered them through the sea. And so one of the images here of the glass, the sea of glass, is this idea of the Exodus, that image. It's also an image, another ancient image of the sea of glass is the primordial chaos that in some of the Canaanite literature, the image of a sea of glass reflects the primordial chaos out of which creation is made. We know that from Genesis chapter 1, when God moves over the face of the deep. That's kind of the biblical image of that. But ancient Canaanite literature also has an image of primordial oceany chaos, watery chaos. So they're beside the sea of glass, and they're singing the song, "Great and amazing are your deeds, just and true are your ways. You alone are holy. All nations will come and worship you. Your judgments have been revealed." Here, the judgment of God is good news, because the judgment of God is ending all of the pain, the sorrows, the tears, the conflicts, the hunger. All of these things are being ended as God intervenes in history. Verse 5, "After this I looked, and the temple of the tent of witness in heaven was opened, and out of that temple came 7 angels with 7 plagues, and they have 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God, the plagues of God." Now, we're told that the temple is filled with smoke, and no one could enter the temple until the plagues were ended. Now, again, when you think temple filled with smoke, that's the image of incense burning, the idea of God's presence. So God's so fully present in the temple, and God's wrath is unfolding through this process that everybody has to back off. And it's so holy in there right now. We just can't enter it. God's presence is coming nearer and nearer all the time. And then beginning in chapter 16, they start pouring out the bowls. Notice this other series of 7. Think about how many times in the book we've had a series of 7 that sets up another series of 7 that sets up another series of 7. And this is kind of the last time that we have a series of 7, because now it's going to end with the cosmic conflict. So we begin to pour out the bowls. The first angel, verse 2, pours out a bowl, and we have foul and painful sores come upon those who had the mark of the beast. The second one pours out the bowl, and it becomes like the sea becomes like the blood of a corpse. Third angel pours, and the rivers and springs of water become blood. And number 4, verse 8, the fourth angel pours his bowl, and it's fire. You get the idea. The fifth angel, sixth angel, you get frogs in there, you get all kinds of things. Well, on the back of your outline, I tried to show you how the plagues they echo some of the plagues of the Exodus. Now, they're not identical, but they're very similar, and they're not comprehensive. But you have about 10 plagues in the Exodus, and you have about 6 or 7, depending on how you count them, in the Revelation. But you notice how they're very similar. Water turns to blood. You have frogs. You have sores that are on the marked. You have thunder and hail. You have locusts, but the locust we had seen earlier in the book. And then you have darkness. So these same plagues that we encountered in the Exodus are showing up here. Now that's not an accident. Again, the book draws on this imagery. People would have been familiar with it, and they would have made the connection, at least some of them would have made the connection between the Exodus and the Revelation. Now, I want to focus on a couple of these. In chapter 16, verse 5, I heard the angel of the waters say, "You are just, O Holy One, you who are and were, for you have judged these things because they shed the blood of the saints and prophets. You have given them blood to drink." It's what they deserve. Remember way back when we were talking about the martyrs, and they were crying out, "How long, O Lord? How long, O Lord?" Well, this is kind of indicating you're being vindicated now. The people are getting what they deserve for killing the saints and prophets. So we're having this experience of vindication. And then in the sixth angel in verse 12 pours his bowl on the great Euphrates, and its water was dried up in order to prepare the way for the kings of the east. Now, in the ancient world, there's no record of the Euphrates ever drying up. It was the kind of river that just doesn't dry up. And so this is a shocking image. For the Euphrates to dry up would have been unheard of. The other thing about it is it's kind of the reverse of the Exodus experience. The Exodus, the waters opened up, dried up, so that the people could walk in deliverance. This time the waters are being dried up so that the enemies from the east can cross over and do battle. So it's again, playing on the imagery of the Exodus, but doing kind of a reverse image. Verse 13, "And I saw 3 foul spirits like frogs coming from the mouth of the dragon, from the mouth of the beast, and from the mouth of the false prophet." These are the 3 beasts, remember. And the frogs, one issues from each of their mouths. What are these things? Verse 14, "They are demonic spirits performing signs, who go abroad to the kings of the whole world to assemble them for battle on the great day of God Almighty. So, the three beasts have these frogs. They are going out. They're doing these amazing works, and they're summoning all the kings of the earth to do battle against God. Verse 15, behold, I am coming like a thief. That echoes the language of 1 Thessalonians when Paul speaks about this and says that Christ comes like a thief in the night. God intervenes like a thief in the night. There's, it's not, and keep in mind, the idea that God acts in God's time, God comes like a thief in the night, is a way of saying you don't call up the thief and say, you know what, Tuesday night would be a great night to come hit me up because I'm going to be out and I'm going to be, we're having a party, and between, 8 and 10, nobody's going to be home, but we always leave the back door unlocked, so just come on in, steal what you want. No. The thief in the night, nor does the thief in the night say, I'm going to be breaking in on Tuesday night between 8 and 10. So if you could just leave the door open and be out of the way, that'd be nice. That's not the way thieves work, right? What works here is that God operates in God's time. This book is not designed to be a code language for the historical unfolding of events, so that we know that in August of 2025, that's when it's going to happen. The one thing that all predictions of the end of the world have had in common is what? They were wrong. They've all been wrong. And do you notice how nobody ever predicts? They don't read Revelation and say, you know what? The end of the world, based on my calculations, is coming 1,000 years from now. Right? It's always, it's going to happen now. It's right around the corner. I'd say about October 17th, something. The point is, that's not what this book is. It's never been that. It's not trying to give us a roadmap. It's not a Bible code. It's not a timeline. God's time is God's time. God comes like a thief in the night.
I'm going to back up a little bit. About the Euphrates drying up so that the enemy's from the east. So I'm confused by them coming from the east. At this point, are there, the one army that they're worried about, or the one power, is from the west? So
Rome, you're talking about.
Yeah, Rome.
Yeah.
So what do you? Is there imagery there about Old Testament stuff?
I really should say it's more like the coming.
Because it does.
The Parthians, when they attacked Rome, they came from the east, and
right.
The Romans were a little afraid of the Parthians. So in terms of them coming from that direction, we're also going to see they come. The way the Euphrates is relative to Israel, it's actually coming from the east and the north.
Correct.
So they're coming down, and when we get to Gog and Magog, it's going to be coming down. So you're right to point out it's not just east; it's kind of east and north. It's coming down.
I just wondered if it was more of an Old Testament reference to the Persians and the Babylonians.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Tigris, Euphrates is where those ancient powers were.
Right.
And so you got Persia and Babylon and all that up there, and they're coming from the east and down into Israel when they battle. And we're about to get, the very next thing is verse 16. Well, I should back up and say 15, you have another benediction. So if you're counting, just underscore that blessed is the one who stays awake and is clothed, not going about naked and exposed to shame. another one of these benedictions. And remember, how are they clothed? What are they wearing? What?
Spirit of God.
Well, they are, yeah. But I mean, remember how they keep talking about, I'm wearing a white robe that's been dipped in the blood of Christ. So they're not naked because they're wearing the blood of Christ. You know, that's the idea. And then verse 16, and they assembled them at the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Now, I like to compare that to something like Gettysburg, Waterloo, Omaha Beach, that kind of thing. It's in the ancient world, Armageddon literally means the hill or place of Megiddo. Megiddo was a city or a fortress kind of that Solomon had built and put a lot of chariots and things, because it overlooks a place called the Plain of Israelian. And if you think about the map of Israel, kind of, you've got all these powers up here, you know, Rome, Greece, and Babylon and all that, and then you've got Egypt down here. So if you're going down here to fight Egypt, or Egypt's coming, you got to go through Israel. And the Plain of Israelian is kind of where the roads come through. And so sooner or later, the people who control that pass are the people who control the north-south route. So you're going to have a battle there. And so just like we talk about Gettysburg being this place of the battle that turns the tide, or we talk about Yorktown or Waterloo being the battle that turns the tide. That's what Armageddon is the battle place. And it's referenced in some places in the book of Kings and such. It's talked about Judges 5:19, 2 Kings 23, 29 to 30. If you want to look some of that up. And then this place, this Armageddon, is again a symbolic place of the cosmic battle. Any comments about any of that?
Yeah, it's a place, not a thing. It's a place, not a thing.
Yeah, it's a place, but a symbolic place, and in that sense, it represents the cosmic battle. The cosmic battlefield. And you mean it's not a thing in the sense that it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the way you hear most people use it.
Right. Yeah.
So how did they get that it's the end of the world and all that? I mean, you know, how do they read that into that?
Yeah.
Good question.
Great question. And I think
and I want to talk about that question.
And I think it's the same way we get rapture out of this and things like that. As people are reading it a different way. They're not reading it as apocalyptic literature, as you know, with its elements and features and symbolic language. They're reading it as a timeline of history, and so you know they're just thinking a very different way about this book. Charlie Siegel used to talk about the Schofield Reference Bible and how it had taken this book and set it up into dispensations, and you get dispensationalism, and you get these chapters of time, and again, it's always we're living in the last one. You know, I mean, if we're living in the fourth one, you know, who cares, right? But we're always living in that, on the brink. We're always at the end. The way
the doomsday clock is ticking down.
That's right. It's 1 minute to 12, right? So, but you know, one of the reasons I like to do this study is to at least say there's another way to read this book that I think is faithful, and I think it's faithful to read this book as with its rich symbolism, its references back to the Hebrew Bible, its powerful message, look for the good news of the book, see Jesus at work, those kinds of things, as opposed to let me tell you how all this leads up to the end of the world happening in October of 2025. And that's where a lot of the stuff you're talking about, like rapture and whatever, come in.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I think, like, where do people get stuff? We know that from just in our world. There's a part of the human mind and human fascination that just loves conspiracy theories. And we see that in our world. It's always been that way. It's just like somebody reads something and figures out, like, tries to connect some dots and puts it, and then when they put it out there, it's like just people become fascinated by that, and it becomes, because we're human beings, and I'm not a psychologist enough to know what it is about humanity, the human beings, that we like conspiracy theories, but we do that going all the way back to JFK in my lifetime. But before that, there were conspiracy theories about pretty much everything, and all this stuff about, like, the roadmap of the rapture and the tribulation, and the movies that are out. You can go buy books all about that. Well, that was never even heard of in Christianity for like 1700 years. It wasn't even a thing. Like, for 1700 years, nobody even thought about that, right? And then there's one person who starts reading stuff in the Bible and, like, puts that together and figures it out and writes about it, and it catches fire. And it happened to be in North America, and so for the last 200 years or so, that's become a big thing. But it wasn't like, if you were a Christian in 1600, you'd have never even heard about that or thought about that. But yet you can go buy books and see movies and go attend things and whatever, and about that. That's like what it is, and it's just stuff that happens because we're human beings. Where somebody like, how do they come up with that? Somebody who's got time on their hands, puts this together, puts that together, and there had to be, there was, like, on the grassy knoll, there was a reflection and this and that, and it had to be this and whatever. And you just put stuff together and it turns into something, and it catches fire, and people, like, become fascinated by it, and becomes bestsellers and whatever, and it's just, we're human beings, like, how do you come up with it? It's like the human mind can come up with all kinds of things.
Fake news.
And then when you, but if you read it, then you kind of get sucked down that rabbit hole of whatever it is. You're like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense, or this is here, that's in that verse, or this is in the gospel, or that's in Thessalonians, or that's in Revelation, and it becomes like the whole truth, like there's just a truth that you can't see the other way out of.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons that Lutherans, if you look at the ELCA Constitution, they actually have a section on reading the Bible, and they say that Lutherans, and I would say Christians, but we're talking about Lutherans here, read the Bible this way. Cross and the resurrection are at the center of everything. And then Jesus. And then the New Testament. And then the whole of Scripture. And then you get into the Lutheran confessions. And on like that. The point being, you always read whatever we're reading through the lens of Jesus. As a Christian. Not as, a Jew wouldn't do that, but as a Christian we do. And so, what have we done in this book? Where's Jesus? Where's Jesus? The whole point is let's follow Jesus, and the book will come to life. And that's really the same thing about how do we read Paul? How do we read the book of James? How do we read even things in the Hebrew Bible? Well, we read it with the idea that the cross and resurrection is the center of our faith. And And so when we start making judgments about behavior or other people or anything like that, it's like, does that jive with the cross and resurrection? Can you come to that conclusion looking at whatever through the lens of the cross and resurrection? And if you can't, it's probably not faithful. And if you can, you can at least say, well, that's a possibility, But I hope that in part answers your response, not answers, but response. All right. Want to try to finish up quickly with 17. We move into the judgment against the whore of Babylon. And remember, by this time we've seen Babylon is what? Rome. And we talked about this sexual imagery is about faithfulness and unfaithfulness. It's about allegiance and idolatry and all of that going toward Rome or Roman gods or other gods, other behaviors, other drives, versus being faithful to the call of God. And this is a place where, we've got this image. A woman shows up riding a beast, the scarlet beast, that has blasphemous names and 7 heads and 10 horns. We met that back in chapter 13. And it's wearing purple and scarlet. So these are the colors of both wealth and that kind of thing, power, but also that scarlet sort of has like the scarlet letter idea to it. This figure is called Babylon, the great mother of whores and of earth's abominations. And so this is Babylon, Rome. In verse 6, it says, "When I saw her, I was greatly amazed, but the angel said to me, 'Why are you so amazed? I'll tell you the mystery.'" Now remember, we talked about how from time to time the book interprets itself. And this is an example of where the book, whenever it says things like, "This is the mystery," or "This requires wisdom," or something like that, it's the book saying, "Bonk, bonk, bonk." It's like, wake up, pay attention. I'm about to tell you what this means. And so, I'll tell you the mystery of the woman. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to ascend from the bottomless pit. Now remember, God is the one who was, who is, and who is to come. This is the one who was, but is not, and is about to come back from the bottomless pit to go to destruction. So there's a deliberate contrast there with our image of God. The world will be amazed when it sees the beast, because it was and is not, but is to come. Remember we talked about Nero before, about the legend or the myth that Nero would return. And so we're talking about that. Verse 9, "This calls for a mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. And there are 7 kings, of whom 5 have fallen, 1 is living, the other is not yet come. But when he comes, he must remain a little while. The beast that was not is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7. All of this is pointing to Rome and the emperors. The idea is that Rome is built on how many hills?
7.
7. And so Rome sits atop the 7 mountains. And then on the back of this sheet, I gave you a list of the emperors, kind of relative to this period. And scholars do different things to count down the 7 emperors and such. So there's not a consensus about the exact way to read this. But you can at least see that you've got Nero on the list, and most scholars believe that it's during the reign of Domitian that this book is actually written, so during somewhere 81 to 96 of the Common Era. So you could imagine if you start with Nero, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you get Domitian. So you can see that that's one possibility of kind of seeing how you've got 7 emperors, and remember, one of them's an 8th that belongs to the 7, and people who would say Domitian is Nero come back, or Nero is coming back himself, perhaps, but symbolically, he's another Nero in that he's evil and he's a persecutor. Anyway, that's why I gave you that list of emperors, so you can play with that and you can come up with your own way of counting. Then at the end of this section, it says, the beast will hate the whore, they will make her desolate and naked, they will devour her flesh. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by agreeing to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God will be fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules the kings of the earth. You see how the book keeps interpreting itself. It's telling you who the woman of Babylon is. It's Rome. But also notice theologically what's going on. God has put it into their hearts. Whenever you see this it's like God hardened Pharaoh's heart. You remember how that keeps happening in the Exodus. Well, that's kind of what's happening here. Is the point is, God is sovereign. God is Lord. And so what's happening is God's will. God is the first thing God's doing is having an implosion. Rome's own allies and Rome's own powers are kind of turning inward, and there's going to be crisis and a break within Rome itself, and the idea is that it's going to collapse from within before it collapses from without. And it's happening because God is at work. God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose. This is like in Isaiah when the prophet says, Cyrus of Persia is the Messiah. Messiah means anointed one. Cyrus of Persia was anointed by God to do this thing, which is to deliver the people from Babylon and let them return to Israel. But what's cool about that is Cyrus doesn't worship God. God is not, Cyrus is not a Jew, but the Jewish God is doing things through Cyrus to bless God's people. So that's the kind of thing happening here in the Revelation as well. Okay. I think we've got 2 minutes. I'm looking at the clock. 2 minutes. We'll have to pause at the end of 17, and then we'll pick up. Next time is basically the cosmic battle in 18 and 19, and then we will get into, won't belabor chapter 20 with the millennium because we talked about that a little bit already. And then we'll talk about the new heaven and new earth in chapter 21, which is the punchline of the book. So, okay. Any comments, questions? 1 minute remaining. Oh, but we don't want any extra, so I'm being very careful. Anything?
Did you have a handout the last time I wasn't here?
I think I did, yeah. Didn't I have it? I might
email
have
it.
What?
I can email them out.
And I think I may have an extra. So. All right. Hey, thanks a lot. I really appreciate your sharing this, and we will finish up next time and see if there is good news in the scariest book of the Bible.
See you then. It must be October. I got plans for the summer.